Welcome to the Fathers 4 podcast, everyone. We're just four dads sitting around talking about how to be good dads.
I'm Spencer Seal.
I'm Trevor Beasley.
I'm Brian Packer.
And I'm Forrest Cole.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about an article that we read on CNN that came out on Monday, September 18th. It's called The Male Loneliness Epidemic and How It Affects Fathers. I don't know about you all, but I've had these conversations with my wife before, about how ever since becoming a father, how my relationships with friends have changed quite drastically, and how, in many ways, you almost don't have time for male friends, right? Because, we work during the week or through the day. You get home, you want to be with your family, right? I don't want to be really anywhere else. And of course, I also want to be there to help for dinner, bath, bed. And, every once in a while, like after all of that, we can, I've had times where I've gone out with friends and things like that, gone out with you guys to the movies or to a baseball game or something like that. And I think that it's interesting to me because I have felt that, I don't know if I would label it as loneliness, but maybe I would, it's something that is missing, right? That ability to connect with male friends that I had when I was younger is not always there, and I think this podcast has filled that void in many ways, like being able to sit down with you gents and like talk about things. And we always spend time before we actually record catching up and talking about life, and that has been awesome. So thanks, guys.
Yes.
Thank you. But have any of you guys felt that way? Oh, Spencer, you're going to say something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when I was single, I had lots of friends and no obligations, right? As you guys can relate to. And then you get married and your obligations increase, and then you have kids and it's like, holy crap. And so you really have to be intentional about the relationships that you're going to foster and develop. And then the rest unintentionally, or maybe some are intentional, I don't know, unintentionally, just kind of unfortunately kind of fade a little. And, you keep in touch on social media and, occasionally you might see old friends and do things. But the friends that, at least in my experience, that I'm really close with are the ones that I have found ways to foster while parenting, and the rest have kind of gone away, unfortunately.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I think kind of the same thing. Like in high school, I feel like I had a pretty large group of friends that, we would just all do whatever. We'd hang out and it'd be like 10 of us or 15 of us and just, hey, what are you doing tonight? I don't know. We're just going to go over to so-and-so's house and figure it out. And you start getting married and they start getting married. All your friends start getting married off. And then you're like, okay, well, I'd rather spend time with my spouse than all of you guys. Like, yeah, you're fun, but like my spouse. And so you kind of stop spending as much time with each other. And some of those relationships really needed the consistency for them to last. And as that consistency decreases, those relationships just kind of fizzle. And then, you, like you said, you have kids and your time just becomes so minimal that you can really spend. And I think it's hard. I find it hard anyway for me to even like carve out time for people outside of my family. Because like, kind of like what was mentioned earlier, we go to work or school or whatever. I'm kind of busy throughout the day. And I keep seeing this really funny meme that's like something like parenting, trying to fit your entire relationship into the last 2 hours before bed after you put the kids to sleep, something like that. And so, and it's so true that, like, okay, I have these couple of hours before it's our bedtime and that's it. And I don't want to like go somewhere else because I only have those couple of hours with my wife.
Mm-hmm. Or like staying up too late because you want to get that time, right? Like, Brooke and I do this.
An awful father the next day.
Right. We do this a lot, right? Because it's like, so something this is sort of maybe a little bit of a side note, but right now we're trying to transition our kids into going to sleep by themselves.
Ooh.
And so we like get them ready for bed. We put them in their beds.
Prayers to you.
Thank you. We sit on the couch, which, in this house, everything's small, so everything's close. We leave the door open. It doesn't always go well. And we can talk about this in another episode. There have been some very weak moments on my part. I think I threatened
Has the
to
screaming
throw
been coming out?
Fisher's. He likes to collect bags. His kids. Yeah, it happened. It happened. So it's weird. Like, again, I don't want to get too far off topic, but I had this tooth pulled, as you guys know, and every day at maybe I said this last time, but for weeks, every day around 2 to 3 o'clock, I would get this debilitating headache, so bad, that and I just wasn't myself. And, if something happened while that headache, I would often lose it. Anyways, but they're going to bed a little bit later, right? And so we're trying to treasure that time that we have. So we're not going to bed till midnight. August wakes up at 6:30.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. It's important to me to have male friends. It's really important. And and I've moved around a lot, and usually I'd live in a place, I'd have a group of friends, and there'd usually be one dude who was we'd be super tight, and so those guys are still my friends. Those singular guys are still my friends. Tim, our Brian and I, our old boss at Leighton, he was that in Abu Dhabi. We were super close. But since having kids, those opportunities are less, and I'm going to read this quote here from this article. It says, "We hear a lot these days about men not finding the kind of deep friendship that helps them through the ups and downs of life the way many women do. I've also experienced what has been called the male loneliness epidemic, and many dads tell me it has reached into fatherhood." I think, I was talking to Brooke about this, and she was saying, as women, especially as women who have the opportunity to stay home with their kids, they go on play dates with, other women and their kids. They go to the, when we were in Utah, the aquarium or Thanksgiving Point or all of these places, and they have these opportunities to bond and create these deep friendships. And I think, so how do we do that? How do we find it? If we're working, if we're spending time with our family, how, sort of as as advice for others, how can we find those opportunities? And don't say golf, please.
Let's go golfing.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I think on our first podcast, I told you guys that my wife is better at golf than I am, but she sucks at golf.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was kidding about the golf, mainly because, and I'll add this and then I'll be quiet. But I was mentioning this topic to Brooke today, and she was saying, said something really interesting, that, her view of dads who say take a Saturday and go golfing with their buddies all day is those are bad dads.
Yeah. Right.
That's sort of I think a general view of dudes who just go golfing with their buddies all day Saturday or whatnot.
Well, that's
what
why
are your thoughts on that?
That's why I golf. That's why I stopped golfing when my boys were, born, because going and playing on a Saturday, whether it was with my dad and my brothers or, friends or whatever, it takes up too much time away from the family. As they got older, then I get to play with them all the time. Darth Vader's behind you. I love your voice.
You cannot make this up.
Uh,
There they both are.
I mean, I
Anyway.
think what you're saying isn't really is really interesting, Brian, because you have your boys are older,
Yeah. So now we,
and so going and golfing with them, it does take time away from family, but you're also together, right?
right. And that's where it's gotten to. So for a long time there, I really only would, go golfing if I got invited to play in a work tournament or something. But then as the boys got older and they wanted to play, we go play
Yeah.
together, but we still stay away from doing that on Saturday. We try to go like real early on a Friday morning or later in the day on a Friday when we can, it doesn't impact work or school or anything. Because the Saturdays are still kind of that precious day when we like to spend together as a family, or, as they're older, they might be working on that day, or we're this time of year, we love watching college football and it interrupts with games. I'd rather watch a game than go golfing. But that's how I connect. That's how I've been able to connect over. I mean, I've had a decent relationship with a guy that lives here in our neighborhood. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we try to go golfing frequently. That's how we spend our time together. But other than like that and spending time with you guys, I don't do a lot with other guys. I have a group of 6 other friends from high school that we were all close together. And one of them lives out of state, and when he comes here for work a lot, and when he comes into town, at least quarterly, maybe a couple more times a year, we'll get together, as many that we can, and go grab dinner. We don't spend all night though. We meet somewhere. We usually hour and a half, and over the last 25 years, you tell the same stupid stories over and over every time you get together. But it's it's one way we've been able to keep in touch. And it's kind of taken, honestly, it's kind of taken the effort of, I've kind of kept that together, because I usually will find out when the one's coming into town and say, when you come, and do you have an available night? I can try to get everybody together. Would that have happened with, without? But I'm glad that's happened though, because we all graduated 31 years ago from high school, and the fact that we still, at least a few times a year getting together has been really valuable and important. But other than that, it's like it's my family that I spend most of my time with.
Yeah.
And
Darth Vader.
I think one thing that has helped me is love that. Is it takes spousal support, and if your wife understands that there are a small number of relationships that are super important to you, outside of your marriage, then that is huge. For instance, my wife gets that I do this podcast. My relationships with you guys are, it's super important. My college roommates, we try and get together once a year, and those relationships are super important. Like earlier this year, right before we moved to Texas, and everybody knew we were moving soon, me and my buddies from college got together, and my wife planned the whole thing. And
Cool.
she basically just said, "Hey, I know you love these guys. They're your good friends. We've kind of all gone our separate ways. We live in different areas, and so it's more of a chore to get together, and so we don't really see each other that often." But she called their wives and was like, "Hey, let's all get together before we move." And that
cool.
It was awesome. It was super awesome. Yeah, and we had a great weekend, great time. I probably wouldn't have done that. I don't know. Maybe we're just I don't know why, but it was very meaningful, and I'm super grateful to my wife for doing it, and we had great time with the guys. So it takes an understanding spouse to help you foster that along, and to kind of kick you in the rear to say hey, look, if you actually want to foster these relationships, then you got to do something other than just be a dude and do nothing.
Right. Yeah. This last November for my 50th birthday, Brooke bought me a ticket to fly back to New York to visit my friends from New York. And I thought, and she did it because of this reason, this topic that we're talking about, because we had spoken at length about, because I move so much, I am separated by geography from most of my close friends, and so sure, we can talk on the phone, we can share text messages, but that ability to keep that deep connection is not always there, you know?
Yeah.
It's in, I wasn't able to go because I got laid off, or, you know, I lost my job. I was supposed to leave the next week, so I had to cancel the trip, but I'm still hoping to make that trip, you know, this year. But I think you have to make an effort, and it's easy to not, right? It's
Yeah.
easy to be a
Yep.
dude, like you were saying, Spencer. It's
Yeah,
easy
totally.
to just be like, I'm just going to hang out with my family. And I think, yeah, having a spouse that's, you know, Brooke's very supportive of me wanting to foster relationships. She's supportive of this podcast. She's supportive of, you know, anytime we wanted to go to like a movie or go have dinner or go to somebody's house or whatnot, you know? And so I think that's really important, and vice versa, right? I support her wanting to like go, and,
Mhm.
you know, she had the mom group in Salt Lake that she would go out with, and other things too, you know? So
Mhm.
I think it's hard. It's a really hard thing to do when you're married with kids, maybe even just married. It's hard to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always look
Yeah.
at, you know, I
But
think
it's
about
harder when you
I
have
think about
kids.
what's it like when you get older. You know, how's it going to be as we get older, those relationships? You know, I always kind of laugh at the, you know, seeing the old guys that get together at the McDonald's on the every Saturday morning, you know, type, you know, thing that, you know, or
Yeah.
whatever, the coffee shop or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, am I going to have that when I'm older, you know, or am I just going to be at home and not worrying about it? So it's, you kind of wonder how it's going to be as you age.
Yeah, I know. And I think, you know, as an American society, you know, I think as an American society, from comparing to my experience in Europe, where, you know, you have these little neighborhood cafes and little neighborhood spots where you can grab some pinchos and some drinks, and it's just like a block away from your house, and you'd always see like guys meeting up there, and I like that, right? I like that ability to just kind of like just meet up, and even if you hang out for 5 minutes, you're building those relationships, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know how to create that in a place where, you know, most of us live in sort of a suburban kind of environment where
Mm-hmm.
those places don't really exist, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally not organic, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
we don't go to bars,
no.
right?
No.
Which is, you know, probably what I did when I was younger.
Yeah. I feel like COVID kind of accelerated it as well,
Totally.
Sure.
because COVID, I mean, obviously during the pandemic, everyone was isolated.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, a lot of companies were like, oh, we can like save money on office space and just have everybody work remote. And so everyone started working remote, at least hybrid, if not full.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like I experienced that. So when I was working at Salt Lake County, I was entirely remote. And so like I talked to my coworkers every single day for hours, but it was like this, like on a camera, and it just was different. It was
Mm-hmm.
not the same.
Mhm.
Like the first time that I met my coworkers was at like a county party or get together or something. And
Mhm.
like the one coworker, one of them, I had talked to him every single day for, I don't know, 3-4 months, and met him, and he's like 7'2". Like he is so tall. I had no idea. Just thought he was this regular, like older guy. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And I meet him, I'm like, holy cow. And yeah, so I think like just that in itself has really accelerated. And I think the article even somewhere pointed that out, that like there's a lot that the normal institutions that we as men used to, you know, be able to congregate and you know, talk shop or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
have kind of gone away to some extent, even just partially. And that's really had an impact on the ability to really create those deeper relationships.
Yeah.
Sure. It's just not the
I
same
think one of
trying.
the
I mean,
weird things about
go ahead,
Brian.
Spencer.
I think one of the weird things about this loneliness, this fatherhood and loneliness um, topic that we're discussing is when I have noticed it present in my life and in myself, it was like it snuck up on me. You know,
Hmm.
when I noticed it most when my wife and I moved to Cedar City. At the time, we didn't even have kids. Um, and we were newly-ish married. We were expecting our first kid. And I moved down there to finish my degree. And so I was going to SUU, new place, new, everything. And I wasn't depressed. That word is pretty weighty. I wasn't depressed, but I was just kind of like, I don't know, not myself. And I think one of the things that came to me was that I was lonely and I had no friends. And
Mm-hmm.
it was weird. We had moved from Provo, where I had lived for a long time as a single and married person. And so I had friends that I had accumulated from when it was just me, when it was me and Stephanie, and things like that. And then we were starting over, and that was weird. But it snuck up on me. It wasn't, this night and day thing where I was able to identify it like, oh, right away, okay, I'm sad because I'm lonely and I have no friends. Let's correct this, and I could then go to work identifying the problem. It wasn't like that. It By the time I came to the realization, it was like the damage was done,
Hmm.
and then I could kind of go to work and integrate myself into some kind of social scene, which I did. Um, but it had taken a toll, definitely, because it snuck up on me, and I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah. I, I've talked a lot about the passing of my best friend, and when I think about this topic, that's what I think about, right? Because he was, and this doesn't mean that I don't have deep connections with other people, right? But that was the deepest connection that I had, right? Like we knew each other since we were 7. We like did everything together. We traveled the world together, right? We like had all of these like stories, and when he passed away, I went into a deep depression, loneliness, and I also didn't realize it until a year later,
Mm-hmm.
when all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, I think I'm depressed." I think I'm, because I was missing that deep connection, and we had moved to a new place. We moved to Chico. We didn't like it there. I was not a good solar door-to-door salesman, you know. So it was like all of these things were hard, and I wasn't in a place to. I made friends with this guy who I worked with, but it was a good friendship, but it wasn't a deep connection, I don't think. Um, and then when I moved, then a year later we moved to Utah. Same thing. I like moved there, didn't know anybody, but I will say, like, moving into the Boulders was a godsend, because you're sort of so close to all of these people, and you guys ended up being there, and being in the same ward, and so I think that was great. That was gave provided the ability to build the deep connections that we have. But I think that's interesting, right? That you you don't know, you don't like go to some place and be like, okay, I'm lonely because I don't have any friends, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It just hits you someday after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was like, how long ago did you guys move? Month? A few weeks? That's when it hit me. It's like, oh, all my, all my friends just moved, and the replacements are not very.
Not as
I don't know
fun.
that I've seen anybody move into either of your homes yet,
No.
but if they have, I haven't met them.
Yeah.
And I got forced into the like, you have to go be social as the Hellish president,
Mm.
and that's not very fun.
I feel nothing. I feel
Highly,
nothing for you.
yeah, highly not recommended.
I feel nothing.
I don't want to hang in church.
I feel nothing.
I mean, church, I think, is a good place
Mm-hmm.
to find those connections, whatever it may be. I think that it's a nice place to go and get to know people and you know, you'll connect with some, but and not others. But I think, you know, as far as for me, right? Like I don't drink anymore. I don't spend time in bars. I don't go to sort of typical social places. And so I think, you know, having a faith and having a church that I go to every Sunday has been really important for me when it comes to connecting with people. And even if it's not deep connections, like I know that's what we need and what we want, but just being able to go and like talk to people,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I feel like men, we also, at least for me, I really thrive off of like small competition. So we talked a little bit before the podcast about this fantasy football league that we're in.
And Trevor's going down.
I don't
Are you
know.
guys competing against each other this week?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I love it.
So, like, I'll be honest, there are a number of people in our ward who I know, have met, have talked to, and do not relate to at all because they are either way more techie than me and I just don't get it, or they're way more into like video games or board games or sci-fi stuff that I just don't, it's just not my level. And so there are a ton of guys that I have met, talked to, interacted with, and I'm like, I just don't have anything in common with you. And so I was feeling very like, oh my gosh, like I have to try and get along with all these people. This is what's left. Like everyone, you know, all the cool people have gone, and this is what's left. And this fantasy football league has kind of brought to light some of those other people who I'm like, these are my people. Like I can connect. But it took everyone like knowing a little, you know, a couple people like, oh, they might be interested to get everyone together. And now we have this group of, you know, how many, 15, 16 people where I'm like, okay, like on some level I can connect with these people. So
There's something about being men that brings us together. That we're brought together by the idea of I need to prove to this other guy that I am better than him.
yeah, tearing the other person down is what
right.
makes us build each other up somehow.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, I think, you know, like I was saying, like I've never done fantasy football. I've never done anything fantasy, period, like fantasy sports, right? You know, I've been in like March Madness pools and World Cup pools, but you know, like not something that's so sort of interactive. And I think, you know, while I'm not there in Utah to like, you know, sort of socialize with people outside of the chat, you know, but it has been really interesting because there's some names that I knew or even faces, and then I'm like, oh, that's their name, right? And I'm like, and then like you start to see like people's personalities come out in the smack talk on the chat, you know, like you, Trevor.
Me?
Oh yes,
I would never.
But there's something that's something interesting, right? Like this little bit of competition, this sort of place that allows men, you know, and women too, but like this most probably men really like to come together, compete against each other, create relationships. I think that's really fascinating, you know? I mean, maybe that's why guys golf together, right? Because there's that competition and you know, I mean,
Very easy to tear people down in golf too.
Yeah. And not that any of us are smokers or drinkers, but it's like the one sport that you can do while you're actively smoking and drinking.
That's true. I have done that.
Most people that I golf with who drink tend to play better as they get more and
As
more
they
drunk.
get more drunk.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've heard that. I have a buddy that golfs and he smokes occasionally and it's like, yeah, you know, if I'm really sucking it up on the course, I just light up and then I start figuring it out.
Yeah.
My boss at work, we go golf as a company periodically, and he will first hole awful, second hole a little bit better. By like the fourth, fifth hole, he is cruising, like just dropping balls 5 feet from the pin, like just smoking everybody because he's, you know, had a couple knocked back.
What were you going to say, Brian?
On the golf side of it, I mean, you've played with me, Forrest, and I Just go and have fun. Even the competitive. I don't even get on the competitive side of it.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's just more about getting out. But it is funny watching or playing with people that do.
And I
get inebriated, and it's hilarious to watch.
I watch them and usually because I suck at golf, and so I watch the drunk people golfing, and I'm like, gosh, I wish I could drink right now.
Worse than that guy. He can't even stand up.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to like bring down golf. I mean, it's sometimes it's an interesting conversation between Brooke and I. I don't have any desire to be a regular golfer. My grandfather taught me how to golf, and he was a Mobil oil executive, and so golfing was business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he taught me to golf at a young age, and so like I like golfing sort of in his memory, and I like it. I like getting out there, walking, smacking that little white ball around, or I guess it doesn't have to be white anymore, but I think there is an unfortunate culture that removes fathers from their families when they spend, because golfing 18 holes that's a big commitment, right?
Yeah. 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, it's not like, I used to, when I lived in Abu Dhabi, when August was young, I used to go I'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go meet a bunch of my guy friends there, and we'd play tennis in the morning from like 5 to 8, and that was awesome because it was like we got to go and play. There was that little bit of competition. We bonded, our relationships grew, and usually I'd get back about because fortunately it was right in the apartment compound where we lived, so it was like 2 minutes from my house, and get back. August would probably barely woke up, so I wasn't missing out on much, and I wasn't. And so I think sports is a great way to bond with friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're onto something, Trevor, with and Spencer, with the little bit of competition, and
since moving here to Texas, and where I didn't know anybody, we have this neighbor. We live in this little duplex, and our neighbor. Well, you can draw from this whatever conclusions you'd like.
You tramp.
Your words, not mine. Hey, what I do off screen is my business, all right? But our neighbors are these cool folks, husband and wife with a 10-year-old girl, and other than the fact that like we're both parents, me and this guy don't really have like anything in common. We both like sports, I guess, but lots of people like sports. We come from totally different backgrounds. He's from the deep South. We are different races. We have different, economic backgrounds in the families that we came from. We have totally like different views and conceptions on the world. He's a trucker. I'm a grad student in international affairs, like everything about us is different. But we've talked a couple of times, and he's a pretty cool guy, super friendly, very nice. And I went to my college football game the other day, and I had some the people that were going to take the other tickets that I had. It fell through, so I asked him if he wanted to go with me, and we went to the game together and had a great time.
Cool.
And it's kind of like small things like that, the opportunities to be social that surprise you and can kind of be an antidote for the lonely father problem, right? And we don't tend to think that like that the small things add up with in little tiny investments that we make in relationships, but they do. And now I got a buddy to say hi to and talk football with and whatever, and we have a shared experience and things like that. So I don't know. I think if you're a dad out there listening to this and you're like, holy crap, I am a lonely guy, I don't have any friends. I don't know, but do something small with somebody that you might not expect that you would enjoy time with. And hopefully it surprises you.
I should have expected that you would have an affair on me or with me because you're studying it.
I plead the
Yeah. I think that's really important, and I think making those small gestures can it's funny, right? Because you could apply that to like relationships with women. Those small, you never know what kind of small gesture is going to lead to a relationship that'll, eventually lead to something bigger like marriage or something. But like with friends, I'll never. So I was living in this apartment building in Manhattan on 13th and A, and I sort of had a similar problem there. I wasn't meeting anybody. My girlfriend at the time, she grew up in New York. She had a large group of friends, and it was kind of a strange relationship when I look back on it. But she would often go out with her friends, like most nights. I wasn't always invited, and so I would just stay home and watch movies by myself or something, read or whatnot. And I had some friends from work that occasionally we'd go to a bar or grab a drink or something, but not all the time. And then this guy from Trinidad Tobago was living in the building, and he was walking up the stairs one day, and he just seemed like a cool guy. And I was like, hey, you want to go grab some dinner? And he was like, sort of like, we hadn't really spoken except for like, hey, what's up, or how you doing, or something, And he was a little bit, I was like, uh-oh, he's gonna like reject me or something.
He's gonna think I'm weird.
Yeah, right. But he was like, oh, he's like, it's all about that neighborly thing, huh? And we like, and so we became super close, and we're still friendly today, and like, chat via social media and stuff like that. And it was just really cool, right? Like that. And, when it made me think of that small gesture of just like reaching out outside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And just being like, you seem cool. Let's hang out,
Yeah. And I don't know about you guys, but some dudes are like, I don't know, they put on this rough facade and like the I'm too school for cool kind of thing. But hey, I like it when people reach out to me and want to do stuff and like, hey, let's get lunch, let's watch the game, let's whatever.
Right.
You bring your kids, I bring mine. Let's go. Like that's really nice. It feels good when people want to actually do stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like a weirdo, but I like it.
No, I agree.
I think I was just kind of perusing back through this article, and towards the very end, it's like the second to last paragraph. I'll just read a little bit of it. It says, it can be hard to make friends as a man, but we need to step away from our isolated lives and step back into our community. And I think we've kind of touched on that quite a bit, like finding ways to step into your community, however big or small, whether it kind of points out a couple of things, volunteering or, joining in a hobby, like kind of what we've talked about with the fantasy football, or just finding those ways. And I think it can be hard. So Brittany and I had an interesting conversation. I think it was last night, actually. And she was like, I feel like, I don't know if it's because I'm a female or just my personality. She's like, I feel like I need more to be like with you than you need to be with me. Like you're more okay just kind of doing your own thing, being alone, and you're more okay with that. She's like, I feel less okay when I'm alone than I think you do. And she's like, I don't think that's like a bad thing, but she's like, I don't want you to feel like because I'm around or available, you have to be with me all the time. Like, I want you to still be able to go do things for yourself. So like, if you're feeling like, oh man, I really want to go do this thing for myself, she's like, you can do that. Just be open, communicate. And
Right.
I think that's important. I think that as men, as fathers, we can do that. We can communicate those needs that we recognize, like, hey, I really love watching shows with you or whatever, but I also really enjoy reading or doing this thing on my own that I wouldn't mind, having an hour a week to go do that thing. And bringing that up and communicating that early on, I think kind of takes away the guilt that you might feel for, wanting to do that, and provides like an opportunity for the two of you to be on the same page and plan those kind of things together. And like, oh yeah, on this day this week, I'm going to be free. And so, you can go do this thing and I'll go do this thing or whatever.
Yeah. I like that. Brian, I have a question for you. Do you feel like, as the representative with older kids, especially older sons, do you feel like your sons fill this kind of void as well?
Yeah, they do fill that void. Fill
the void.
Fill the void. Yeah, no, they do. I really feel like they do a lot of times. When I can get them to hang out with me and not each other, go off and do stuff, with themselves or their friends. But no, but that does fill some of the void too. And I think what I miss the most is because it's something that I've really noticed over the last 3 years or so. I think, like we talked about earlier, COVID really kind of heightened a lot of this, but I don't have, I have one other sibling. I think I've mentioned before in other episodes, I've had one other sibling that lives here, locally by me. My 3 other siblings all live out of town, and my brother that's just younger than me, he and I have always been very close, but haven't lived around him for 10 or so years. And so, he's been out of state for a while, that long. But, so where we had that connection, there may have been those times where we were close and got together and did stuff too. It's just, it's not the same like that. So I find myself sometimes too being like, I just don't have anybody that I do anything with or that I want to do anything with. I think over the last couple of years, though, I've kind of turned into, during COVID especially, it's like I felt like I turned into that, get off my lawn guy and, stay, get away, stay away. I don't want to be bothered. So it's, yeah, but anyways, yeah, they do. They help fill that void, and lost one of them today for 2 years, so off on a mission. So we'll see if Neil can step up and fill that void.
Yeah,
It's hard.
It is hard.
I feel like I've noticed recently as well. So I grew up with so I have multiple siblings, and we all were really close. Like even when we weren't living all in the same home, we all lived fairly close and could drive to each other's house, in a reasonable amount of time. And as we've gotten older, like all of my siblings have moved out of state except one, and the one lives multiple hours north. And so when we first, as everyone was kind of first starting to move out of state, we had like a group text or something that we would, catch up with each other on. And that lasted for 30 seconds or however long, those don't last. And then we did the Marco Polo thing where we had like the group Marco Polo and it all, video back and forth. And that, went for a couple months. And now, I was thinking about it the other day and I was like, it was my sister-in-law's birthday and I wished her happy birthday, and that was the first time I'd talked to her since last year when I had wished her a happy birthday. And I haven't talked to my brother in a year. I talked to my siblings to wish them a happy birthday, and it's not even like a heartfelt, I should be so much better, but it's not even like a heartfelt happy birthday. It's like, happy birthday, hope it was a great day, smiley face. The worst sibling. And yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, man, so I've been trying to figure out a way to get us all kind of connected again, because I don't know, I miss my siblings and I haven't talked to them, and I feel like that contributes to the loneliness, because my community, you can feel lonely because you don't have a lot of friends around because they've all moved to Texas and Reno, but then family, they also have moved out. So I have all my wife's family and we're all really close, but you kind of need your own family around sometimes too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
guys? How do you get connected with your siblings, or do you?
I'm not as connected with, so I have a half brother, and I also have a stepsister who wasn't in my life for a really long time. And now she's, last 5 years or so, she's been back, and not anything related to me. It was related to my stepdad and her. It was his daughter, and they had a contentious relationship. But anyhow, long story. But it's I try so hard to stay connected with my brother, my stepsister, my cousins. I had a ton of cousins in Utah, and tried to see them as much as I could. But kind of the last year, I didn't see anybody, and I just think that it's a hard thing, and I'll lump my friends in this too. My friends who I spoke about earlier that are in different states, I try so hard to stay in contact, send a little text message or Marco Polo or something. But life gets in the way,
Yeah.
and I don't want to use that as an excuse for being a bad, family member or friend, but I'm not alone,
No.
like my other friends too, my family, they get busy, and you just kind of get wrapped up in your own little circle,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. So I have 8 siblings, and
So,
yeah, yeah. Why'd they stop at 9? I have no idea. But the other day, and I don't keep in touch with them as well as I should, like at all. I'm kind of, Trev, when you were like, yeah, text them some insincere crap on their birthday, and like, that's kind of it. Check, I live that. But the other day, I talked to my brother on the phone, and he lives in Honduras, and I've kind of always thought that like me and this particular brother, we're like a lot alike. We kind of see the world the same way. We have similar likes and dislikes and whatnot. And after I was talking to him, I was like, man, I love talking to my brother. Like, my brother's awesome. I should do this more. Like, when I hung up the phone, I was like, we should talk more.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I should get better, and it would probably. I know I'm not the only guy that feels this way, but it would probably do a lot for my psyche and mental state if I fostered my relationships with my adult siblings a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
And what could you do? What could you do? What kind of tools could you put in place to
Well, calling
be
them
in
on their
better contact?
birthdays,
Put their
calling them
birthday
on
in
their
your
birthdays would
calendar.
help. Heaven knows I have enough siblings that's about a monthly occurrence in my family. And I always remember their birthdays. I always at least reach out. I never forget
Sure.
any of my siblings' birthday, but I like pretty much never call them. So I should call them on their birthdays. That'll at least get the communication up to verbal once a year.
Mm-hmm.
bingo.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what an interesting thing, calling people. I feel like we have come to a place. I mean, I don't feel like, I know we have come to a place where nobody calls anybody. And if you call somebody, it's weird.
Yeah.
People
Such
are
a
like,
burden.
why
Oh,
are you
yeah.
calling me?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No,
I have
you're
to
like,
go find my AirPods so that I can
Yeah.
keep doing what I was doing.
Right.
yeah, it's like, did we have a fight? Do you have beef with me? Why are you calling me? This
Yeah.
is weird. Yeah.
What's wrong?
If somebody reaches out to me that way, I'm like, did I do something to offend you?
Yeah.
Do I want an answer?
Yeah. I'll never
Yeah.
forget when I got my first cell phone at 33. And it was a little tiny, like, flip phone. It was a beast. This thing, man, this thing could fall down like 5 flights of stairs and still survive. It was like amazing. It was like this big. And, you had to text with the keyboard, and it was like so annoying. So I was like,
T9.
yeah. And this friend of mine from graduate school, who was also living in New York at the time, would send me texts. And I was so mad about it. I was like, why are you texting me? Just call me, And here I am 20 years later, or more, less than 20 years, 15 years later, and it's totally reversed, right? Like,
Mhm.
I won't call anybody.
Yeah, when Trevor gives me the call, I just boop, ignore.
I knew it. You've been hanging out with your neighbor.
Well, we'll be there in like
Yes.
2 weeks, right?
Yeah, and I'm stoked out of my mind. Brian, I still
Me
have a
too.
4th ticket to that game.
I
But
know.
no pressure. I do this. I'm horrible at this. People always are like, "Hey, dude, I can't go." And I'm like, "I didn't hear that. I didn't hear you just say that."
I'm sad.
I think to answer your earlier question, Forrest, I think another tactic that works for me is planning a time or like a recurring scheduled time. I am very good for the most part if there's something that is scheduled and I know that it's coming up and I can plan for it and it's there and I'm like expecting it, then I'm good at being there. I am not good at being the one to plan it. So somebody else has to be the one to plan it. I am not going to be the one to reach out and get the coordination going. But if someone else is like, hey, this thing's going on at this time, I'm like, sure, I'll be there. But yeah, if it's not something that's planned, then like it's a challenge for me sometimes to just randomly go talk to my neighbor and invite them to a Texas A&M game because it wasn't planned and it's like sporadic and I don't do that very well. Brittany can attest to that. She's like, hey, we have nothing to do tonight. Cool, let's watch a movie. She's like, no, like let's go on a date or you need to be sporadic.
Awesome. What's the takeaway from this discussion?
I can read the last 2 sentences of this article that we've responded to, and we can use this as our takeaway.
Okay.
It says men's lives literally depend on making that connection, on making the connection with other people. This is the truth of the male loneliness epidemic. Right now, it's the bonds with others that we need more than anything else.
Well, gosh dang, that's about to make me cry, you know?
For real. I mean,
Agree.
yeah, I agree. I mean, first of all, what we're talking about is real, right? It's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've all experienced it in one way or another. And, you know, I want to thank you guys for doing this podcast with me and really like allowing these relationships to grow, because I know that without this podcast, I'd have less friends. And so I think that's just like awesome that we are doing this and we're going to keep doing it. And, and it's creating other things, right? Like we're going to, you know, 3 of us are going to be in Texas next year. 4 of us are going to be in Eugene, Oregon, you know, and like so on and other things, right? Like I know that we're in different states now, but who knows? We might be able to like connect again in Utah and record some episodes. And I just think that it's like awesome. And, you know, I think that it's important. And I want to say to our listeners, like, if you're struggling through this kind of stuff, there are options, you know, there are options to go and find the connections that you need and, you know, reach out to us if you want.
Yeah. We could all probably use it.
We could, you know, and I mean, my whole goal with this podcast was to not just create a community of 4, but to create a much larger community. And, you know, the way to do that has not presented itself to me yet, but, you know, something like this could very well help it grow. So
Right.
I think it could be good. Awesome. Because we all know how important it is. We know how valuable those connections are in our life. We don't want to sacrifice the relationships with our family, but we need that time, you know, we need that ability to go. And so I think there's a lot of options out there. We talked about a lot in this episode, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and thanks for listening. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Later.
Go Ducks.